What if, through 4,000 years of rolling colonization, of patriarchy, we've forgotten what agriculture is? What if agriculture isn't just this subsistence activity? What if agriculture is actually a high ritual, and it was created to co-create culture with the earth and to co-create a culture of caretakers? So this is in the oldest of the biblical writings, and it was mistranslated. So it went from being caretakers to having dominion over, conveniently, of course, because we were already well down the wrong path. So what if we lost all those threads, those original sacred threads, those original divine instructions, divine agreements with the plants and the animals? And that in these divine agreements, it wasn't that we were exploiting the animals and controlling nature, which is how all these things have come to be seen, because it's how we do them now. What if it was actually about holding nature up and creating enough abundance in small areas that we can sustain ourselves without stripping the natural world? But instead we forgot these agreements, and we forgot what we were doing, and we exploded our populations with this new technology. And of course, this wasn't a new technology. We have this image like agriculture's maybe 5,000 years old or something. That's patriarchy. That's history that's that old. Agriculture stretches back into Paleolithic times. That's when these agreements were made. That's when we started this divine experiment of trying to create a culture of caretakers. So, as a philosophy, as an overriding understanding, this is what wild culturing is. And in its own very humble way, it's the most politically radical thing you can do. Because at its core, what it has to do with is embracing the wild, embracing that kernel of spirit that's within everything. It's propelling life forward, the very life force on this planet. It's a celebration of that. So it's a celebration of the wild. It's a caring, it's a co-creating, it's working with the wild. Whereas in our Christian tradition, the wild has been very much equated with evil, ultimately. As has the earth, as has the feminine energies, we'll say, that are underlying creation. You know, the snake, the serpent, the tree of life, Eve, all these things are ancient symbols that have been jumbled around to create a different spell that led us astray. So, philosophically, this is what wild culturing is just in these acts of embracing the wild, honoring it, cherishing the wild. Nothing could be more radical. And you're creating a new spell that rolls out in your life. So in the practical sense, like you might be a city dweller, you might be like not really connected to nature. You're like, how can I possibly embrace this idea? Well, the thing is for me, it's a constant way of thinking. So everything from little plantains and little wild chamomiles growing in the cracks in a cement walk to different things that have spontaneously come up in the grass in what is our yard. So honoring these little spontaneous gifts, these things that have come out of the seed bank of the earth or been brought by rodents or birds, ants, they've been moved there somehow, and miraculously this plant's popped up. Now in our culture, we eradicate it, right? Immediately, without even knowing what it is or thinking about it. For me, I bow down to this thing that's broken through the cement, and it has incredible beauty and medicine to it. Yeah? The patch on the grass, we live in kind of a big wetland, so we have to mow the grass for the mosquito population to kind of cut that down. But if there's a patch of clover, if there's a patch of, bladder campion or any other 50 other plants, many of which I brought here, then we go around those. And then, so you can kind of see like at every level you start to apply it, and then the beauty starts to proliferate. You just leave things alone. If wildculturing has a number one rule, that's what it would be. Leave things alone. Nature knows what she's doing, right? Honor what she's doing, understand what she's doing, work with what she's doing. And when you can do that, you can feel that you have, I won't say the right, because it's tied in with so many other things, but you have the privilege to co-create with her. And then, say like the next level of vegetation, say a field that's growing back in or something like that. If you have the opportunity to work with a space like that, you come to know every plant and every being that's in there. And then through that knowledge, you can start to work with those energies. So, like right now, what I'm looking at is this wild plum. It's a huge bank of wild plums, but there's also sumacs creeping in there and a few other things. I have a good relationship with sumac. There's lots of other places I let her go full on with the property. She doesn't need to be in the orchard. So I do a ceremony, I connect with her, I explain to all the plants. Plants are very understanding. If you can be honest and explain to them what's going on, they very seldom resist. And then I'll take out the sumacs. And then you can apply it to your garden. We're growing our corn or we're growing our tomatoes or whatever, and we take out everything else, or we mulch everything else so nothing else can be there. That's not the natural way. All of these plants are used to growing in community. The diversity of the plants serves in so many ways. It would take me a half an hour at least to just cover the surface of it. So there's tons of reasons to leave plants in your garden with your vegetables. But you have to know the plants that are coming in intimately to work with them in a very, very productive way, productive for all parties concerned. And then at a larger level, at a forest level, at a level where, meadows are turning back into forests, again, there's a huge amount of selectivity. There's usually too many trees anyways. They're going to thin themselves out by overcrowding. But in overcrowding, they get unhealthy. All sorts of other problems develop. So you can select, you go in and, like, if there's elms there, rock elms, they're all just going to die out anyways in, 20 years because of this disease we have. And they're not a particularly useful tree to me. And then there's other things, maybe like birch and poplar, depending on your needs, you decide with those. But then there'll be the odd, like hardwood come in, like a beech or a maple or something like that. Those ones you protect. You let them have some space, some sun, and then they become a hardwood forest. As opposed to if you let it grow in, it would have to go through 2 or 3 successions of the softer woods dying out, feeding the land, creating an environment that eventually the hardwoods, after a couple hundred years, would kind of take back. So very often, as a wild culture, you're bumping things along so they happen quicker than they could. And yes, it's for our benefit, absolutely. But we have a right to be here too, And if you really think about it, as a forager, as a hunter, I can tell you, if all I did for all my food was forage and hunt, I'd have to go further and further afield. And that's just one family, right? You can imagine when you have hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people, suddenly it becomes impossible to live that way and not strip the earth of all her, value, all her weight, all her potency.